The One Piece multiverse exists, and in particular there exists a terrifying set of alternate timeline Straw Hats. In this timeline, Oda explores what would happen if one particular event went very, very wrong. The Straw Hats form, then set sail into the Grand Line, at which point a devastating calamity occurs, and Oda then goes on to show us how this radically changes the future as we know it. Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam, and I'm hoping that this is the good timeline version of me. If not, hey, the bad timeline isn't too terrible. I certainly can't say the same for the Straw Hats though, because Eiichiro Oda has been creating alternate timeline versions of the Straw Hats, inhabiting what I'm going to label as the Dark Universe. Some of the things that you see in this video are going to shock you, and a lot of those things have also been drawn by our wonderful channel artists. And 3 lucky subscribers from this video are going to win a custom artwork, requesting whatever they'd like. For example, one of our previous winners wanted Ace with a donut body, and well, that is exactly what we delivered. To win, simply be subscribed to the channel and leave a 1-sentence comment with your art request. And yes, you do need to be subscribed because YouTube shows me this funky little red dot next to your name, so you cannot fool me. Suppose unless you subscribed, won the contest, and unsubscribed, then yes, you would probably fool me. You'll also receive a high-quality digital copy of your request, as well as have it featured in future videos, thus becoming part of Grand Line Review history. So look, rather than saying more words and things, I think that the best way to introduce you to the Dark Universe is simply to take a look at our alternate timeline Luffy. Because the good news is, Luffy is still very much alive in this universe. The bad news is, it's not much of a life. At age 40, Luffy is a rather disheveled, chubsome mess. He is unshaven, and honestly, he probably doesn't bathe a whole lot. Not that he does in the good timeline, mind you. According to Eiichiro Oda himself, Luffy only showers once a week, which is not enough, but it's definitely more than Dark Universe Luffy. More importantly, the quote we have accompanying this Luffy is, "Pirate King, don't be such a dreamer." And it gets worse, because then we skip 20 years to age 60, and Luffy is a complete senile mess of a man, balding in all but one very curious spot, and just saying, "Can I have that meat?" So at least that's consistent, but this is a really horrifying future. The best way to sum up the Dark Universe is a place where dreams come to die. In this timeline, Luffy suffered what he inflicts on all of his opponents, which is to crush their hopes and dreams, leaving them alive, but hollow and empty. And not only that, but in this universe, characters' core values are warped and perverted. And there's no better representation of perverted than Sanji. By which I mean just in general, but particularly at age 40 in our Dark timeline, Sanji has abandoned everything he believed in, growing quite overweight because his philosophy on food is now, quote, "It's all the same once it's in your stomach." To be fair, I can imagine that he's lost his sense of taste due to all of the chain smoking, which is probably going to be a problem anyway for his good universe counterpart. However, this is absolutely nothing compared to how far Sanji would fall, and this is actually one of the most interesting Dark Universe outcomes. But at age 60, Sanji basically becomes his biological father Judge. It's almost as if at some stage Sanji returns to the Germa Kingdom, and bizarrely enough actually makes Judge proud, and thus inherits the throne, the will, and of course the butt chin of Vinsmoke Judge. Sanji goes full supervillain to the point where his quote is, "Dump the poison in the sea." So Dark Universe Sanji becomes an actual antagonist. Someone that, well, traditionally in One Piece, you'd need a young Luffy type person to come along and punch fight him straight in the face hole. Here's the thing though, the Dark Universe isn't just blanket bad from the get-go. This is a universe where something along the way went very, very wrong. So there's a bit of a mystery to be solved here, and part of that answer lies in our next character. Here we have Usopp at age 40. Just as with most bad timeline characters, he appears to have gained a lot of weight, and there is very little remarkable about him whatsoever, except for what he's saying, which is, "Monkey D. Luffy, he's my underling, you know." And not only that, but Usopp at age 60, now emaciated, toothless, and looking rather homeless, is presenting a similar rambling. Because 20 years later, he's still basically saying the same thing. Roronoa Zoro, he's my underling, you know. Which presents 2 possible conclusions. Either this is a world where Luffy and Zoro still go on to become famous and Usopp is just lying about people he's never met, or the Straw Hats did form a crew in the Dark Universe. And look, I'm just going to spoil it right now. The second answer is the correct one, which we know by examining Nami. At age 40, she is, well, she's certainly something. From what we can tell, she's very irate and yelling, "I said, give me your money." But the most important detail is her tattoo. She is no longer bearing the symbol of the Arlong pirates, so in this timeline, Luffy does still defeat Arlong and frees Nami, confirming that at the very least, our original crew of 5 Straw Hats get together and complete the events of East Blue. So that's not where our calamity happens, but before we get to that, you should prepare yourselves for some Some age 60 Nami. And at this point, Nami no longer has the, how shall we describe it, the youthful maneuverability required to be a thief, so she has turned to the world of scams. And in this image, she is trying to sell someone a quote magic pot. But still, how did this happen? What went so catastrophically wrong that it led to everyone abandoning all of their dreams and values? Well, for that, we need to hop on into the Grand Line. Chopper at age 40 is one of the more horrific outcomes, going from cute medical friend to a very violent rain doctor, and even worse, by age 60, he's become the monster that everyone on Drum Island actually feared he was. In fact, he's actually shouting, "Bring me the sacrifice," which is terrifying because it kind of implies that Chopper is just flat out murdering people or creatures, I guess. Either way, it's murder, and either way, it's unpleasant. And the kanji on his shirt says poison, or at least it's supposed to, because my artist seems to have used the kanji for lid instead, which I find hilarious. But basically, it's telling us that Chopper is now more focused on inflicting disease and pain rather than curing it. However, he also provides a great clue, because at age 40, he is saying, "Straw Hat, don't ever say that name again." So not only does Chopper know Luffy, but Luffy appears to have either betrayed or disappointed Chopper, thus more than likely destroying his faith in humanity and leading to the hulking Wendigo Chopper of the future. But the Straw Hats made it to Drum Island and recruited Chopper. So the calamity occurs after that. Or now, but potentially not too far after. One issue we run into at this point is that none of the remaining Dark Timeline Straw Hats provide clues about crew interaction, which led me to believe that the calamity of this Dark Timeline occurred on Alabasta. That all of this is the result of what would have happened if Luffy lost to Crocodile, the kingdom of Alabasta falling, and Vivi more than likely dying. The crew would have been distraught. This was their first proper global challenge, and they failed spectacularly. Not only losing a crewmate in Vivi, but also Luffy's dreams being crushed, and the crew ultimately losing faith in him. Now, the reason why I say this happened on Alabasta is actually because of Robin. She is still very much alive in the Dark Universe. Again, at what cost though? Our age 40 Robin has all but abandoned her dreams and claims to have thrown out all of her books. Meanwhile, age 60 Robin has taken an even more startling turn and is actually offering to buy a child. So Dark Timeline Robin is involved in the slave trade, and I think that makes sense because her appearance does give off some very Mother Carmel kind of vibes. She also looks like an older version of her fake Straw Hat counterpart Coco. You know, the one who offered Chopper a pickle and single-handedly created one of the most disgusting yet sexually suggestive images in all of the One Piece. But this Robin has no mention of the Straw Hat, so it's possible that she never even joined the crew. And the same can be said of Frankie. Unlike everyone else, we see Frankie at age 50, and he appears to have lost any and all sense of humanity. He is no longer a cyborg, he is just a full robot, and he says as much himself. "I am the robot that will destroy all of the ships in the world." Because remember that Frankie was traumatized when his battle Frankies were used for all of the bad things. So this Frankie appears to believe that ships are a cause of evil, which is really fascinating when we look at him at age 70, because he himself, in the most radical shift of all of the Straw Hats, has actually become a ship. This is the Battle Frankie 70, and unlike Battle Frankie 50, he no longer retains even the shell of being human. This is the result of a full conversion from human to object. "I am Battleship Frankie," like a Dalek really, which is why I did the voice. It's almost like a twisted Batman though. In the Dark Universe, Frankie has become the thing that he feared most. A very fascinating insight into what would have happened if he'd never met Luffy. Except there is a problem with that theory. Because the idea of the Straw Hats losing on Alabasta makes all of the sense in the world until you examine Zoro. Dark Universe Zoro is very revealing. Not so much because of anything he's saying, which for the record, at age 40 that is, wounds on the back are ouchie ouchie, which is of course a twist on his philosophy. Basically no longer concerned with shame and much more concerned with not feeling pain. But the biggest and most interesting part of alternate timeline Zoro is that he still has a scar on his left eye, which is absolutely massive because it means that this Zoro trained with Mihawk during the 2-year time skip. So whatever calamity happened to the Straw Hats actually happens after the time skip, which in retrospect is also echoed by Usopp, who at both age 40 and 60 is wearing his headphones, an accessory that he only acquired during the time skip. Before we figure out exactly what happened though, we should complete our rather unfortunate picture of Zoro. And at age 60, we have the saddest possible outcome, with Zoro on his hands and knees begging for money, which is of course an intentional parallel to Zoro begging Mihawk to train him. In this timeline, Zoro is now committing what he once believed was the most shameful possible act, just to beg for a handful of berries. As for our calamity, this actually makes things quite clear. In the post-time skip era, there aren't actually many opportunities for Luffy to have his dreams crushed. Fishman Island, Punk Hazard, and Dressrosa were never serious breaking points for Luffy, which narrows our options down to this many. The first is that Luffy fails on Whole Cake Island, but the issue here is that I don't think there's any outcome that breaks his dream. His willpower is simply too strong to be brought down by the conflict with Big Mom or even Katakuri. However, our second option is very possible, which is that Luffy loses on Wano. The Allied forces conduct the raid on Onigashima, and in this rather sickening timeline, the raid fails, which is significantly more impactful because this is the Straw Hats at full power. They gave it everything they've got, and they lost anyway. Perhaps in the Dark Universe, Luffy is never able to awaken his Devil Fruit, or maybe his Devil Fruit isn't actually special at all, meaning that he confronts Kaido at 100% of what he has, and his dreams are destroyed, much like Gecko Moria before him. It would also explain why everyone's still alive in the alternate timeline, because Kaido generally prefers not to kill his opponents. He often doesn't see the point in it because he's practically invincible, and instead he can use his former opponents to further his own desires. But the third, and in my opinion most interesting possibility, is that we have not yet encountered Luffy's breakpoint. In the Dark Universe, he can still beat Kaido but fail at the very last hurdle, which is the future conflict with Blackbeard. In the final fight to determine who becomes the Pirate King, Luffy is beaten. Blackbeard takes the crown, and the Straw Hats are left decimated, having come so far, all for nothing. And it really does put a nice cap on the whole Dark Universe name, because this is the timeline where Blackbeard becomes the undisputed ruler of all of the things. So the Straw Hats disband and retire into mediocrity, having been unable to achieve even a single one of their dreams, with Luffy in particular returning to Dawn Island to live out the rest of his days as a hollow yet husky shell of a man thing. How do I know that he goes back to Dawn Island? Well, that's because there are still two Dark Universe fates that we have yet to explore. The first of which is, oddly enough, Port Ghasty Ace. In this timeline, he is alive, but he seems to have retired from piracy. Very notably, he has a scar across his face, which may imply that the one who broke his dream was Whitebeard, because it's very evocative of the scar that Whitebeard gave Crocodile. And at age 40, our bizarrely bow-tied Ace is now saying, "Hey Luffy, lend me some money." So the two of them still know each other and are probably living in the same general vicinity. 20 years later, Ace is even worse off, this time begging Chopper for money, which is an interesting outcome, but more importantly, Ace is now sporting Goldie Roger's trademark mustache. So just as Bad Timeline Sanji became his hated father Judge, Bad Timeline Ace becomes his hated father Roger. And I guess the saddest thing is that Ace is only alive in this universe because he gave up on his dreams. So it feels like Ace was always in a bit of a no-win situation. Either he dies as an optimist, or he lives on as a pessimist. But for someone who suffers an even worse fate, let's catch up with Sabo. In the Dark Universe, Sabo still tries to set out as a pirate and gets explodified by a world noble. But in this case, the key event here is that he is not saved by Dragon, but instead he miraculously lives on with his trademark scars and ends up becoming a noble of Dawn Island, very much mimicking not only the aesthetic of his father, Outlook III, but also his core beliefs, as Sabo is saying, anyone who isn't a noble is trash. Quite a radical shift for Sabo there, but at age 60, it all comes crashing down. What minimal fortune he has now vanished, and he's left begging for drinks, and it's heavily implied that the person he's begging is Makino because Sabo is saying, "You know Luffy, he's my little brother. He'll pay for it, so please let me have a glass." Which paints a picture where the three brothers, Ace, Sabo, and Luffy, end their days together living in relative misery on Dawn Island, with their childhood hopes and dreams being lost to the ravages of time, and probably either a big blue fish or an obese cherry pie enthusiast. For a much better universe though, here is another video. It's good and fun, and I look forward to seeing you there.